Skepta, Jammer, Mas Tiempo. How grime MCs reinvented electronic music. To really understand Skepta's transformation, we have to revisit Shutdown. Shutdown is a grime anthem, but listen closely. The instrumental is sparse. The drums are punchy, but restrained. There's a space between each hit. The power doesn't come from musical density. It comes from a command of space. Skepta mastered something early in his career. Minimal production and maximal presence. That same philosophy underpins Mas Tiempo. The difference? In Shutdown, the silence exists to amplify bars. In Mas Tiempo, track's silence exists to amplify groove. The mechanism is identical. The function changes. That's evolution, not abandonment. Grime energy is volatile. It thrives on reloads, crowd eruptions, bar for bar clashes, sudden instrumental switches. House energy is cumulative. It builds for layering, gradual rhythmic hypnosis, extended blends, subtle shifts over time. Mas Tiempo is essentially grime discipline applied to house patience. Instead of an 8-bar switch up, you get micro percussive changes every 16 or 32 bars. Instead of a drop, you get bass tightening. Instead of an MC reload, you get crowd movement deepening. It's psychological rather than explosive, and that psychological control is a DJ skill, not an MC one. We can't ignore the broader bass continuum. Artists like Scream began in early dubstep, a genre that, like grime, lived around 140 beats per minute, before shifting towards house and techno. Dubstep's early minimalism shares DNA with grime, heavy sub-bass, sparse arrangements, dark atmospherics. When Scream transitioned into house, he didn't erase his past. He carried bass weight into 4-to-floor rhythms. Skepta's movement mirrors the trajectory. It suggests something important. 140 BPM bass culture and 128 BPM house are not opposites. They are neighbouring dialects. Mas Tiempo has become a bridge between those dialects. What happens when two of grime's most influential MCs stop standing in front of the decks and step behind them? For over 2 decades, UK grime has been one of the most uncompromising, raw and sonically futuristic genres in modern music. It emerged from pirate radio, council estates and youth clubs in East London. It was aggressive, minimal, electronic, fast. But today, artists like Skepta and Jammer are reshaping the DNA through a club-focused movement called Mas Tiempo, a project rooted not in 140 BPM clashes, but in house minimal grooves and global dance floor culture. This isn't a side project, it's not a trend jump, it's not grime going EDM, it's something more important. This is the story of how grime's architects are returning to electronic music and quietly rewriting it from the inside. To understand Mas Tiempo, we need to dismantle a myth. Grime is often discussed as a rap genre, but at its core, grime was electronic music. Emerging in early 2000s, East London, grime evolved from UK garage, jungle and dancehall sound. I must say that Skepta actually comes from Tottenham and Jammer does forward from East London. Grime evolved from UK garage, jungle, dancehall sound, system culture and pirate radio transmission. Producers built beats in software like Fruity Loops and Cubase. Synths were sharp and cold. Drums were skeletal and aggressive. Tempos hovered around 140 BPM. There were no bands, no live instrumental, no analog nostalgia. It was computer-built urban futurism. Artists like Wiley pioneered icy instrumental tracks like Eskimo, defining a minimalist synthetic aesthetic. Crews like Boy Better Know, co-founded by Skepta and Jamie, solidified grime as both a musical movement and cultural infrastructure. The MC became the face, but the producer was the architect. And Skepta, he started as both. Before mainstream success, Skepta was DJing, producing, engineering, pressing instrumentals. His understanding of club sound systems and beat architecture was foundational, not secondary. So when we talk about Skepta moving into house and club music, we are not talking about departure, we're talking about return. By the mid-2010s, Skepta had become one of grime's most globally recognised figures. His 2016 album Konnichiwa won the Mercury Prize. Tracks like Shutdown became anthems, even being co-signed by figures in American hip-hop. Grime had gone international. Remember A$AP Rocky collab with Skepta. But here's the key shift. As a grime entered global spaces, festivals, fashion weeks, luxury branding, it began brushing shoulders more consistently with electronic dance culture. At the same time, UK club music was evolving. Tech house was dominating Ibiza. Minimal grooves were resurging. UK funky and basslines echoes were re-emerging in underground circuits. Skepta was touring worldwide. He wasn't just performing, he was observing, watching how house DJs control crowds different from MCs, watching how tension built without lyrics, watching groove become the protagonist, and somewhere in that observation, the seeds of Mas Tiempo were planted. To understand Mas Tiempo, we also have to understand Jammer. Jammer has always been deeply embedded in Grime's infrastructure. Found off the iconic Basement Rave series, Lord of the Mics, he preserved clash culture and underground authenticity, but Jammer, like Skepta, was never confined to one role. He was a producer, a cultural organizer, a bridge between eras. What makes Mas Tiempo powerful is not just that two MCs started a house label, it's that two cultural gatekeepers did. That distinction matters because they weren't entering house as outsiders chasing relevance. They were entering with authority and with an understanding of how movements are built. Mas Tiempo translates from Spanish to more time. The name itself signals patience, longevity, a long game mentality. Rather than position themselves strictly within tech house or minimal, Skepta and Jammer presented Mas Tiempo as a groove-focused club music. The early releases emphasized rolling bass lines, stripped percussion, hypnotic repetition, DJ functionality, extended blends, subtle tension rather than explosive drops. This is critical. Grime is confrontational, house is immersive. Grime attacks, house seduces. Mas Tiempo doesn't abandon Grime's energy, it eternalizes it. The aggression becomes sub-bass weight, the reload becomes tension and release, the clash becomes a slow build in the mix. Instead of lyrical warfare, we get rhythmic hypnosis. One of the most symbolic moments in this evolution is Skepta and Jammer performing Mas Tiempo sets in Ibiza, particularly venues like DC-10. Ibiza is not pirate radio, it is the global capital of electronic club culture. For grime MCs to command space there, not as novelty acts but as DJ, signals something profound. Grime's architects are no longer asking for access to electronic spaces, they are claiming there. And here's the deeper shift. Instead of grime adapting to American hip-hop aesthetics, it is reasserting its European electronic lineage. That is a philosophical pivot. Grime doesn't need validation from rap. It can align with techno, with house, with minimal, with the European club continuum. Mas Tiempo is not a crossover, it's a recalibration. There's a deeper layer here. For years, electronic music spaces, particularly in Europe, have often been racially segregated in perception. Black British artists were urban, white European DJs were electronic, but grime always blurred that binary. Mas Tiempo disrupts it completely. Skepta and Jammer are not guests in house music, they are contributors to its future. And that matters because electronic music historically emerged from black communities, from Chicago house to Detroit techno. So what we're witnessing is a reassertion of black British presence inside electronic futurism, not as MCs over someone else's beat, but as DJs controlling the full room. Let's talk sonics, grime production, square wave synth, sparse drum programming, sudden switch ups, conversational energy, Mas Tiempo production, warmer lower end, swing heavy percussion, groove continuity, subtle modulation, club fakers uki design. Instead of sharp stabs, we get rolling patterns. Instead of lyrical punchlines, we get bass hypnosis, but the discipline is the same. Minimalism, restraint, space. Grime taught Skepta and Jammer how to make minimal sound feel powerful. House simply gave them a different tempo and audience. When artists at Skepta's level pivot, industries pay attention, you began seeing more grime-adjacent artists DJing, cross-pollination between UK rap and club lineups, festival bookings that blur genre categories, younger producers unafraid to move between 140 BPM and 128 BPM. Mas Tiempo quietly gives permission to evolve, permission to step outside genre loyalty, permission to re-enter electronic music without abandoning roots, and perhaps most importantly, permission for MCs to become curators of atmosphere, not just deliverers of bars. So how did Skepta, Jammer and Mas Tiempo reinvent electronic sound? Not by inventing something new from scratch, but recognising grime was always electronic, reclaiming DJ identity, entering a global club space as equals, translating urban minimalism into house groove, redefining what evolution looks like. This isn't grime dying, it's grime expanding. Mas Tiempo isn't an escape from grime, it's grime maturing. Maybe the most radical thing about this movement is that it proves reinvention doesn't require betrayal. Sometimes it just requires more time. Mas Tiempo. If you want to understand Mas Tiempo's intent, you start with one of his early defining releases, Mas M, Fill in the Space. The title alone is telling. It carries grime energy in language. M in grime slang means to dominate a rhythm, but the execution is pure club functionality. The track operates on a rolling 4/4 kit. Tight percussive hi-hats, minimal melodic content, heavy sub-bass presence, subtle rhythmic syncopation. What's fascinating is what's missing. There are no reload moments, no MC hype, no explosive drop. Instead, the power comes from restraint. That is where grime discipline shows up. In grime, producers like Wiley often built tension with minimalisms, skeletal beats that left space for MC warfare. Skepta's pivot into house wasn't sudden. Before Mas Tiempo formalised as a label, Skepta had already been exploring house textures and collaborations. So some differences between grime and Mas Tiempo. Grime, intro, immediate tension, switch up, 8-bar pattern resets, vocal driven energy, abrupt engines. Mas Tiempo, extended intro, DJ blend friendly, groove establishment, micro variation in percussion, subtle bass modulation, no sudden breakouts, long outros for mixing. The philosophy is different. Grime says pay attention to me, house says move with me. Skepta and Jammer learned both languages and now fluent in both. There's also a geographical shift happening. Grime was hyperlocal, East London, Tottenham. House is transnational, Ibiza, Berlin, Amsterdam. By moving into house, Skepta isn't abandoning London. He's putting London into a European club lineage that includes Chicago origins, Detroit techno futurism, UK rave, Ibiza residency culture. Grime always had European DNA through UK garage and jungle. Mas Tiempo just makes that connection explicit. The UK scene has a pattern: jungle, garage, grime, dubstep, drill. Each wave builds on bass innovation, but what Mas Tiempo does differently is circular evolution. Instead of inventing a new genre, it reintegrates into house, the foundation of global dance music. That's maturity. It signals that grime artists are no longer fighting for recognition, they're shaping legacy. The most radical part of Mas Tiempo is not that it's louder, it's that it's calmer. Grime was urgency, Mas Tiempo is control. Grime was pirate radio, Mas Tiempo is international club systems. Grime demanded space, Mas Tiempo commands it. And the through line is minimalism. Whether at 140 BPM or 128 BPM, Skepta and Jammer understand one rule: less is powerful. That philosophy connects grime to house, London to Ibiza, MC to DJ. This isn't genre switching, it's evolutionary design, and it may quietly become one of the most important shifts in modern UK electronic culture. By DJing again, Skepta shifts from protagonist to facilitator. That's maturity in electronic form. He's not trying to dominate the crowd with voice, he's shaping the environment with sound. That repositioning transforms how grime artists are perceived in club spaces. Some critics misinterpret minimal house as emotionally flat. but Mas Tiempo's sound isn't sterile Berlin minimalism. It retains swing. That swing is deeply British. It echoes UK garage shuffle, funky house percussion, sound system bounce. Even when stripped back, the rhythm feels physical. That physicality links back to grime raves, sweaty basements, close proximity, communal intensity. The venue changes, the architecture changes, but the bodily response remains central. Mas Tiempo isn't just Skepta releasing tracks, it functions as a platform. Electronic music scenes thrive when labels curate sound direction. Artists collaborate across subgenres, residencies create cultural hubs. By building Mas Tiempo as a brand, not just as a side alias, Skepta and Jammer are constructing infrastructure. That mirrors what they did with Boy Better Know and Grime. The difference, Boy Better Know built a grime empire, Mas Tiempo builds a house ecosystem. That consistency of movement building shows strategic vision. Grime often gets framed as hyper-British, but its roots stretch into European rave culture. The UK rave era of the 1990s, jungle hardcore, all were intertwined with continental electronic circuits, but entering Ibiza's club system, Skepta reconnects grime lineage with that European continuum. That is important culturally. Most importantly, it shows that grime was never isolated. It was always part of electronic music's broader story. Skepta and Jammer didn't leave grime behind. They zoomed out, they saw the larger map, and they chose to operate on it. Music scenes often talk about authenticity as staying the same, but authenticity can also mean staying curious. Mas Tiempo isn't about switching genres, it's about expanding territory. And if Grime's early slogan was about Eskimo, cold minimalism, then Mas Tiempo is the warmer evolution of that same position. More time, more space, more control, and maybe more future. Mas Tiempo, Skepta, Jammer, and how grime MCs reinvented electronic music. Thanks for listening. Please make sure you like, share, comment and subscribe. Pick up all the watchers and listeners. Done talking.